So, Miguel, good morning. Just for the tape, tell us your name and the title and the company.
So Miguel Neves, the company's called Skift Meetings, and I'm editor-in-chief of Skift Meetings.
So, and Skift Meetings is one part of Skift?
It is. So Skift Meetings is formerly Event MB, and it was a company that was acquired in 2019, and Skift is the parent company. So we do the coverage of the meetings and events part of the industry.
And yesterday, you were responsible here at the show for the education track that Skift had?
Yeah, we call it the Innovation Lab. It was a 3-hour session that we did yesterday from 2 to 5, all about conversations, peer-to-peer learning conversations. We didn't have any speakers on stage. We had 15 experts in the room facilitating the conversation and just making sure that we kept on track. And it was a little bit an unconference. I don't know if you ever experienced one of
Yes.
those, but we borrowed a little bit for that. It was a complete unconference, but we borrowed a little bit and had some research as well that we were releasing.
So, what was the sentiment in the room? What did you feel that people are they losing sleep over this transition? Are they getting comfortable with the post-pandemic world?
I think there's definitely still a lot of concern. It is an uncertain time, but there were some interesting things that came out that we weren't expecting as much. There's a lot of uncertainty. Technology. People are confused about a lot of things and trying to do a lot in a short period of time, short lead times, that kind of thing. But there was also something bubbling up around careers and kind of understanding where people want to go next. A lot of people had changed jobs very recently, so there's a lot of conversations that were
Yeah.
interesting and not necessarily something you kind of assume. And we tried to keep it as a safe space so people could have those conversations and not fear that anybody's going to be
No, it's
looking at them.
fascinating. And I know I've read about what you've done. I've been talking to the hospitality schools. Are they training the people that you need for the jobs? It's not about tablecloths and,
Yeah, and I think also the jobs themselves are in many ways not attractive to this. We've pulled the cover out. We've pulled the curtain away, and I think people coming into the industry, young people or people that are retraining, understand how stressful it is. They can see that, and that's not that appealing. And I think this idea of the way we work has changed because of the pandemic. I don't know if being on the road, 9 months of the year, living out of hotels, is that appealing to a younger generation. So it's like there may be some restructuring, some branding around the industry that probably needs to happen because we do need good people. And if we're not, if we're getting people that are working in it just because they have to, then you're not going to get that kind of level of dedication that you're hoping
right.
for.
And they need the time to be creative. And they need the space to be creative. And I think digital offers them that opportunity. But so talk to us about Skift during the pandemic. You guys had to do a lot of
Yeah.
changing around. So what'd you do?
So I only joined in February 21. So I wasn't there for the kind of more drama part, the start of the pandemic. So Skift, I think, went through a really big restructuring, the parent company. So we're about 70 people in total now, but I think it went down to about 30 at the kind of, where it really hit the pandemic, and slowly been rebuilding. And, they're very proud of, or we're very proud of, what we've done and how we've grown. But it was a really stressful time. And on our side, on Event MB, that then was rebranded to Skift Meetings, it was very good, and
Right,
it was.
you went virtual.
We went virtual. I mean, we were always very, focusing on that space anyway. And then we were doing, I think the peak event, we did a virtual event where 11,000 people logged in, and it
Right,
was
so
like,
you had an audience that never heard about you before, who are now.
yeah, I think it was an audience that sort of knew us, but suddenly they were home, and at that start of the pandemic, there was that period where people were just home and didn't quite know what to do with their time. I think they all figured out they got really busy, but there was that moment for like a month or something where suddenly everybody had some free time and wanted to figure stuff out and wanted to retrain, and we picked up on that, and it was very good for us for a couple of years. It worked very well, and now I'm not saying it's not going well, but it's different, right? We're kind of like
Right.
figuring out what's happening, and unfortunately, a lot of people have left the industry as well, so it's a different audience. You have a community, you have an email list that you're kind of looking after, and then suddenly, I remember when we sent one big email campaign out, and I had something like 500 responses of "I'm no longer with this company." I just reading through those, I was like, "That's sad. Actually, that's actually really sad." And You have to kind of regenerate and become relevant again. And that's where we think being part of
So
Skift makes sense.
it's so important. So pandemic, you transition to virtual. You service 11,000 people. What do you toss away in a post-pandemic world, and what do you hang on to in terms of the tech and the virtual?
It's a tough one because I think we're still trying to figure that out,
Yeah.
to be honest, right? It's not an easy thing. Um, I think a lot of it is that motivation to just try new things and to just sort of go, you know what, this is an issue, we need to figure it out. And I think as hard as it was, it sort of forced us to figure it out, right? We're a completely remote company now. There is no office. Everybody just works wherever they want. And that's great in a lot of ways, but also it has teething issues and we have to figure that out. And
Right.
when you kind of take the parallel to the virtual side, virtual has this like for the people that are used to in person, a bit of a bad name right now, or at least it did for the last like 3 or 4 months.
And not a revenue generator, which
Exactly.
people.
Or not a revenue generator in the same way. Because
Yes.
we always ask about that, and people are like, well, I can't really figure out how to make money from virtual. It's like, yes, but maybe it's not about making money directly, right? And sponsors are trying to figure out how to sponsor virtual events. It's like, well, you can't just sit in a virtual booth and expect people to go
Go find your booth.
go find your booth.
Right.
Because it's like having a website and expecting people to find you, but not being anywhere else, right?
Right. So you flip it inside out. You have a stage and you call up your exhibitors.
You gotta
People-
work different ways, right? And I think we're also going back to a place where I'm not sure virtual events as a sort of multi-day lobby networking
Right.
booth thing is really working. I think a lot of people are saying, actually, if we do a webinar and a good webinar, well produced, well thought out, that actually might be better to keep the community engaged, to kind of give people
Yeah.
content to have those discussions, than trying to make them go to the virtual booth and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's
Right.
like,
It's really rethinking the whole temporal thing.
And it's-
3 days of.
yeah, and ultimately it's, when you're doing websites and things like that, you can test things, you can A/B test. What do people actually do? And if you're really honest about virtual events and what people actually do with them, you've got to do the stuff that that actually works, right?
That's
As
right.
much as technology creates this and that, if people don't use it, it could be a
Yeah.
marketing thing, it could be a communication thing, but if people don't use it, I think it's better that we say, hey, let's
And the
not
great
do
thing
this,
is
right?
You can measure it. Where you could never measure what was a live event was a bunch of serendipity maybe happened or didn't happen.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I don't think that necessarily events were perfect by any means, right? Like trade shows and things like that. Some were great, some were not. Some brought results, some didn't. So it's great that you can measure and you can measure things instantly, and sometimes you can even change things in real time. Say, hey, let's shut this bit down because it's not really working. Let's tell people to go over here instead.
yeah, no, agility is key. So what are you looking for here? What do you what have you seen in the
Well,
few
I've only
hours you've
been,
here?
Well, for me, it's about having conversations with people. That's the big event yesterday we did was all about that and catching up, making new contacts. But we're always looking at innovation in the broader sense, and that can be technology, that can be new venues, that can be anything. But future forward thinking, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for new ideas, new concepts. I've been chatting with the technology people a little bit already, and it's great to hear some products, but I have to say most things are sort of incremental or kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
this other person's doing this, so we're going to do that. And I was like, that's great, but I'm hoping to find some people that are doing things a little differently.
Yeah. It starts to look, we used to call it, in word processors, we called it the ransom note. Just throw everything in there and,
Yeah.
every font you have, and you're seeing a lot of that. I personally think there will be a lot of consolidation, M&A. You're already seeing it with Stova? Is that
Stova.
the- Stova?
Yeah.
Never mind the name, but I guess I get it. But I think you're going to see more like that, and I think they have to start integrating with the destinations themselves. I mean, people want one-stop shopping. If I'm going to Florida, I want Florida to be outfitted so that I can do everything, right?
Yeah, and maybe there's ways to do that so that it's sort of neutral depending on which software you use, but it hasn't really happened yet, so
No.
one can hope, right?
No, and reskilling, but I personally think Skift is out there ahead of the curve, both editorially and in events. Love what you did yesterday. Love
you.
the idea of unconferences and letting people feel safe and opening up. So Look forward to talking to you again, and I hope you have a great show.
Thank you very much. You too. Thank you for having me.